How are you?
Well, thanks. How are you?
Excellent, very well. Now, you've written this book called I Know You Got Soul, Machines with That Certain Something.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, it was, you remember when Concorde crashed?
Yes.
And I thought I remember watching it thinking, you know, that's probably the first time since perhaps the Titanic where we mourned the loss of the machine more than we mourned the loss of the people on it. I mean, not just because they were German or anything, but it was... You did say I was politically incorrect. There we are. So, no, I'll be serious. So there was that sense of, oh, my God, you know, Concorde has crashed. And then I started thinking, I wonder how many other machines there are that have got this kind of soul. I mean, my computer, I could cheerfully smash that to a million pieces and I'd be happy about it. But, you know, there are certain things, like flying boats and destroyers and what have you, and you look at them and think, oh, God, yeah, that's definitely got something. So that's what the book's about.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the things that you choose, like Concorde, were in fact beautiful but deeply flawed.
They were, because a flaw, I think, is a human trait. So the bigger the flaw in it, which Concorde we now know had, that gives it this humanity. I mean, there's every single one of them, pretty much. I mean, I've done a chapter on airships.
Oh, Zeppelins.
Yeah. Count Zeppelin wasn't an engineer, nothing to do with flying. Thought, I'll build an airship. And the first one was useless, so that bankrupted him. And the next 27 crashed. 27 of them crashed, and he kept going. Oh, no, no, and the local king kept giving him more money and so on, and then the army bought a couple because they thought, we'll send them over to Britain in the First World War, scare them into submission with these huge airships. Everybody came outside to look at them. That's fantastic, look at that. George Bernard Shaw wrote a letter saying he was rather hoping there'd be another raid the next night. So
And yet you say in the book, of course, that there was one Zeppelin, one journey that Zeppelin made that you would love to have gone on, one of the great romantic journeys.
The 127th Zeppelin. Yeah, I mean, they pretty much all crashed or blown away. But the 127th was the Graf Zeppelin, and that went round the world. I forget the exact date now, but early. I mean, certainly it was flying over parts of the world that nobody had ever flown over before. Yes. And you can imagine what that must have been like to be flying over the Russian tundra and so on, and over to the Sea of Japan, in a sort of oak-panelled room with a record player, dressing for dinner. I mean, it just must have been fabulous. Really, one of the great journeys. And also, again, it's that the machine, the point of that journey, it wasn't like Scott trying to get to the South Pole. You know, the point is where he's going. The point was the machine, because they were actually going to end up where they started from, back in Germany. But there are so many of them. You know, there's just, when you start looking into it, the Spitfire's another obvious one.
That's wonderful.
And do you know how much the Spitfire cost the British taxpayer? No. 12 grand.
Is it all?
£12,000 is all it cost. I mean, that's just...
And was it that crucial? Is the myth true about the Spitfire? Was it that crucial?
Well, I mean, you have to work... if you stand back, I mean, everybody's got a different thing that won the Second World War. You know, Patton says it's the Willis Jeep and so on. But if you actually stand back and say that Britain had to be the launch pad for the American invasion of France, so we had to stay free, you have to say what kept us free, and it was the Spitfire. So really, the Spitfire is everything. Everything we see is down, really, to the Spitfire, which was flawed. You know, it used to break people's knuckles when you were flying it and so on, but very beautiful. And kept people's spirits up. You know, you've got Churchill on the radio saying we're going to win, and then you look up and there's a Spitfire in the sky, and there is that sense of, I think we probably will win this.
You're inordinately fond of two in the book. You're very fond of battleships.
Oh, yeah. Useless.
Battleships are useless.
Absolutely useless. In the First World War, not one battleship sank another one. Not one. Not a huge... They cost... Oh, a dreadnought was like £3 million in 1914. It's huge, great ship. Christ, it's so expensive, we can't let anyone sink that. So they were so protective of them, they didn't let it go anywhere near them. As soon as they saw the Germans, and the Germans were just, oh, God, we've run. So terribly flawed machines, but great. I mean, I wish they were still around today.
And that's continued too, hasn't it? That's that feeling. I mean, the kind of iconic purpose of these things. And I suppose Concorde will be the same. That they'll be remembered for generations far gone when it's out of service.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the ridiculous thing about Concorde, of course, isn't it, that there's the future is in a museum. You go to a museum to see the future, because we still haven't got anything that goes that fast across the Atlantic.
Another thing that's been occupying you recently, of course, has been this family tree programme you've been doing.
Yeah, it's on soon.
Yeah, which is, well, it's exactly what it says it is, a family tree.
Yeah, they did Bill Oddie's last week.
What was your initial reaction when they came and said, this is our idea? Were you intrigued?
No, I just said, no, it'd be dull. And so it proved to be. No, they said, no, look how interesting this is. And they'd done a family tree for me. Now, I was at the bottom, and then my mum and dad, and then their mum and dad. So it fanned out like a triangle, probably 1,000 names on this thing, back to 1780. And do you know what? 1,000 people, all born, lived and died within 12 miles of each other.
In Yorkshire?
We're almost certainly related.
Are we?
Well, if you're from Barnsley, and this lot, we're all from basically kind of Doncaster, Wakefield, you and I are almost certainly brothers.
There's a thought. But you're posh, for God's sake. I mean, you've got loads of money.
Posh?
You're posh. I mean, you're...
I work hard now, but no, God, they were all farm labourers.
Well, what about
they were so daft that you could watch as the mines opened in Yorkshire. You could watch them all. They couldn't even get jobs as miners. They were all like colliery carpenters. Useless.
But you did have some rich people in your family. I mean,
yeah, no, there was. They did find an interesting one, which is the Kilner jar.
Which is?
It's a fruit-preserving jar. But
The
it was
one with the rubber top?
Yeah, rubber top.
Yeah.
And, that was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a Kilner. My grandmother was a Kilner. So they were very rich, but my grandmother was disinherited for reasons we've never known. So I never got any of it, which is... Well, it was to be honest, when they said to me, do you want to do this show? And I looked, I said, no. And they said, but look at this. And they were like millionaires. They were probably billionaires.
Were they?
And we don't know what happened to the money. I'm free on Monday, actually. We could... so I thought we were going to find this big pot full of cash.
Yes. No. But, I mean, would you have liked it had you been the sort of lord of the manor? You could have been... Yeah, you would.
Oh, God, yeah.
You'd have been good at it, wouldn't you?
Oh, loose robes, cigarette holder, people to turn pillows. I would have absolutely, yeah.
I can see you as a kind of playboy figure, Gaylord Clarkson.
Yeah, I'd have done that. I probably would have done that, kept me busy on warm... Well, what do you do to keep yourself busy? Do you know what he does in the evenings? He knits. You knit. Can you knit?
No. I was actually looking at the research where you were, because your wife's away now, you're having this terrible business about looking after yourself and cooking. And I thought, well, I can cook and I can also knit. And I wondered if you could knit.
Do you know what?
What?
I can't.
You can't? I can't knit anything useful. I can knit balaclavas and kettle holders.
Well, if it had been the Crimean War, we'd have been fine. But if you send a balaclava out to Iraq, they're not going to be that pleased. Oh, Michael Parkinson sent us something to keep us warm in the desert.
But what about this business now about you being by yourself? See, had you been rich, you see, like Gaylord Clarkson, you could have had the servants, so therefore you would not find yourself in your present predicament where you're starving because your wife's gone away and a commodity.
I've given myself Ebola. You know that disease where you liquefy?
Yes.
Because I've been cooking, because we've got an Arga. Have you ever used an Arga?
No, I can't use them. I cannot use them. We had
to
one once,
heat
I can't
meat,
use it.
You may as well put it in the airing cupboard. So I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I've got 3 kids. I am going to cook Sunday lunch. Get the fat hot, OK? You've got to do that for roast potatoes.
Yes.
In an Arga, not a 4 hours, you get it out, and they've got about 2 pounds of lard in it. I use a lot. Put the first potato in, which I'd parboiled, which is right, and it just soaked up 2 pounds of lard. Oh, dear, that's not going to be very good. Put all the others in, shoved it in there, left them in there for about 55 minutes, pulled it out, and it looked like I'd got a plate full of sort of anemic donkey's testicles sitting... Oh, dear. And the meat, the chicken had been in there for an hour and a half. A chicken, an hour and a half, bright pink, colour your tongue. Useless thing. And have you ever looked in a recipe book? Just you get a recipe. I thought, oh, right, white sauce. Or whatever you do is make a roux. What? You've got to tell me what it is. And they don't. There's this assumed knowledge with recipe books that I just don't... You've got to go further back. Get the milk out of the fridge. In the bottle, it's white. And then, if you put milk and eggs and salt in a pan and heat it up, how does it know what you want it to be? Because those are the same ingredients, whether it's a sponge cake or a Yorkshire pudding. So you pull them out and you think, sorry, kids, we've got a sponge cake with a roast beef this weekend. your bum. Because it's the same things. I was making pancakes the other day and got Yorkshire puddings.
When you write your columns and when you go on television and sort of sound off about things, I mean, do you find it easy to get angry about things? Do you find that there's a limitless supply of subject matter which really sort of angry?
Well, David Beckham. What's he said this week? That'll get me going. But no, to be honest, I like a lot more than I don't like.
You do?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are really very satisfactory about life. In fact, 90% of it. And then 10%, which is deeply irritating. But that's enough to sustain however many columns it is I write a week.
Yes, and what kind of mail do you get? I mean, is it sort of angry?
Hate.
It's
hate.
Yes.
Hate.
Hate.
A lot of hate.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
And you're pleased when you get hate mail? 'Cause
Well,
I mean,
my wife filters out the nice ones, she tells me, probably to make me feel better about the fact that there aren't any. Because she says it will probably just make you a big head or what's happening, and then just shows me, look how angry this one is. And that keeps you on the straight and narrow. But I don't really mind. You know, I get my say in the newspaper about something, and if somebody really has a very different viewpoint, it's only right and proper that they should be able to reply and say, you're an idiot.
And what about the future? What's lined up for you now? You've got the Top Gear?
Well, I've got Ebola, so it's a short future. Top Gear's back whenever it is, pretty soon, next week, I think. So that just keeps you very, very, very busy. Yeah. And then, God knows.
Jeremy Clarkson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.